Hi everyone, my name is Joseph, and today we have an exciting show. The first part, we're talking about the news, and the news is regarding SAVE, where the government initiated that, linking people's immigration status to social security number. I think it is great intention. It is part of the effort of DOGE, but there's gonna be so many unintended consequences, and I wanna talk about that right now. That's the news segment. And then we're gonna talk about a success story that happened recently, and it's about a K-1 visa, the Fiance visa. And we're gonna dive in deep to talk about the consular processing and the fraud that is happening and walk you through that process. It's a really interesting success story. It's fun. It's one of our own, which makes it all the more precious. But we'll get to that later. So first, the news. Linking your immigration status to social security number, allowing local, state, county, federal agencies to check whether or not somebody is a citizen of the United States, allowing them to get certain licenses and voting is great. But I don't know if it will solve all the problems because it actually opens up more problems. This was an effort by DOGE and with USCIS launching that today. I was reading through it and there's so many questions that I have. So I just want to talk a little bit about that, right? So most people probably don't know. Local, state, county, government offices, whichever agency, if they want to find out somebody is eligible to get a certain benefit, whether or not they are citizens, they have to ask USCIS, right? Makes sense because USCIS, the United States Citizenship Immigration Services, they're the ones issuing you these naturalization benefits and whether or not you are a citizen. And so sure, if somebody presents their passport, okay, you're probably a citizen. But if you don't present your passport, how would they know? You have to ask. These government agencies, when they ask USCIS, there's two things that most people don't know. One, USCIS bills these agencies. And two, just like how delayed USCIS responds to normal applicants, beneficiaries, lawyers, nonprofit agencies, they are super delayed in responding to local government officials as well. To the point where they're constantly trying to expedite, and USCIS responds by saying, you already submitted an inquiry, you have to wait. That is the current state of America. And you might say, that is terrible. We need a better system. So linking it with Social Security makes so much more sense. Now, any government agencies, once they have a Social Security number, they can immediately go and find out if that is connected to a citizen. Voila, problem solved. Except it is not so simple. Here's a couple things. One, do you know how prevalent identity theft is, where your Social Security number might be linked to somebody else, and how often Social Security numbers are purchased? So let's talk about this, right? I've done enough background checks for people where when I pull somebody's record, there might be 2, 3, 4 different Social Security numbers tied to this one individual, okay? So, your Social Security number is probably in some data bank with different credit card agencies. They get hacked, and now other people have your number, and then it's on the black market. It's terrible, but it happens. And it is nearly impossible to change your Social Security number. And so there are plenty of people who have Social Security numbers who are not theirs. And so now, if you are applying for any sort of benefit and they're checking your Social Security number, well, what if somebody else already has it? That is scary, for one. Two, what if your Social Security number isn't updated? You might be saying, wait, what do you mean? Well, you are assuming when you are a US citizen, your Social Security number is definitely tied to being a US citizen. But that's not what most people are. Most people, well, I wouldn't say most people, but in the immigration world, people don't just directly start out as being a citizen. Most people start as a non-immigrant, as an alien. Maybe you're a student visa holder who you're working part-time at the cafeteria, you're cleaning toilets, you're doing something for the school, so you have CPT, you have OPT, you're working as an international student. You have a Social Security number, but you can only work for the school. And then you graduate. Congratulations. You get selected for the H-1B. Now, your Social Security number gets upgraded to a work visa, so now you can work. but you're not a lawful permanent resident and you're not a citizen. Maybe some people enter the country as a green card holder directly because, let's say, they married a U.S. citizen abroad, etc. And now you have a social security number, but it's not a citizen, it's a green card. And then eventually, after 5 years, you apply for citizenship and you become a citizen. Now your social security number should be linked to your citizenship. But who's updating that? USCIS, the United States Immigration Services, they have a separate number. It's called the alien number, the A number. That continuously stick with you, just like a social security number, except that number matches your immigrant status. Your social security number is obviously related with the IRS about your tax filings. But your social security number and the alien number don't necessarily match all the time. Especially if you also change your name, right? You get married, you take your maiden name, you change your name, you change your last name, you legally change your name at the courts, you have to change that with a social security number. So here's the complicated situation. What the government has officially launched with this SAVE program is linking your social security number with your alien number, and it's supposed to match. But if somebody has your social security number, that might cause problems. If your immigration status is not updated and is not linked with your social security, then that might be a problem, right? Maybe you are a citizen, but in the social security data bank, in this SAVE program, you're still a green card holder or you're still an alien. Well, then you can't vote because your social security indicated otherwise. Now you might say, that's fine. Now the system will correct itself. People will go and find out there's something wrong, and then now they will get things corrected. Couldn't they just stick with the old system? Because the old system was that if government agencies want to find out if somebody has legal status, they could contact USCIS. Sure, the wait time is long, and sure, the government has to pay. And now with this new system, local governments don't have to pay, and they can file multiple inquiries. That's just really kicking the bucket down, isn't it? Because you could have just said, okay, well, we waive the fee and we will expedite it with USCIS, and that will be clear, and that will be, almost flawless, other than the time it will take. Well, now you put it into this automatic data bank, and anybody can access it. But what if it's the wrong information that you're accessing? Or you can access it without pay, but again, it's the wrong information you're accessing. Somebody still needs to correct the data bank. Who's going to do it? It's not on USCIS. Well, then is it going to be on Social Security? If Social Security Office personnel, they're already backed up and they're not going to correct it, then guess what? Individuals who have the right to do something now, when they're applying for certain licenses and benefit, because the government agency is using your social security number to check your immigrant status, and that data bank is incorrect, and they don't have the time or personnel to review it, to update it, then suddenly your benefit, your right to vote, is now somehow going to be denied. That is the unintended consequence that I see from this initiative. It might be a temporary thing. It might eventually be solved. It is a good intention. I applaud it. But is it more smoke than fire? Couldn't USCIS just provide this system, and allow government agencies to ask without charging? Couldn't they just do it faster? Instead of cutting the budget on USCIS side, why create a brand new system to solve this problem as opposed to just fixing it within USCIS, right? Your alien number is supposed to be tied with your immigrant status. So with all that being said, the government is trying to do a good job, but the reality of fake social security numbers being out there, of social security numbers not exactly matching your alien progression with your work authorization, with your immigration status, those are the things that I worry about this initiative failing. And because anytime you create a program, you have to ask yourself, what does success look like and what does failure look like? And in this case, what if many US citizens who are trying to access certain benefits are getting denied and nobody is there to fix it? That would be terrible. What if a lot of people who are illegal, who don't have alien numbers connected to proving their citizenship, but they have social security numbers, and their social security numbers that they illegally bought at the black market is linked to a US citizen, and suddenly this initiative that is supposed to prevent illegal people from voting suddenly actually makes it easier for illegal people to vote. I don't know. This is not a conspiracy theory. I'm just pointing out how this initiative, with a good intention, might actually backfire. Again, I've been in this field. I've been seeing how Social Security and alien numbers and how people live in this country, and so these are things that I'm pointing out. If we see any news updates on it, we'll share more. But it just totally popped in my mailbox because this initiative is just being rolled out right now. Government agencies all over have to apply, have to be registered, and then eventually they can start using this program. So I don't foresee this happening within the next month, but if government agencies across the U.S. start utilizing this, I hope that the Social Security Office will have the personnel to back this and to correct anything that's incorrect. And in my experience, when you're trying to correct anything with Social Security, it's a process just as long, if not longer, than trying to correct it with USCIS. So that's the news. I'll take questions, and then we'll get into the success story.
I recently experienced such hostility from a CBP officer at LAX just because I was back to my home country for a medical family checkup for 3 months. I didn't travel outside the U.S. Other than that, I'm a green card holder on the 751 process.
I'm sorry to hear that. The CBP officers have their obligation, and they're not customer service, especially in this administration, right? The previous administration, they're technically supposed to try to treat people better like their customers, redefining people's names. So saying you're a customer is definitely supposed to show more customer service. But at least your green card wasn't taken away. Just know that you're encountering a police officer. This is what I would say. Put yourself in the position as a police officer, as their supervisor. Okay? Imagine you are a CBP officer and you are a superior and you're managing LAX and you're seeing the way they treated you. If you would say that their behavior was wrong, was racist, was immoral, it makes the United States look bad, if they violated your privacy in a way that is unconscionable, you can file a complaint. But only if you feel that, right, as their director, as their manager, their behavior was completely unjust, file a complaint. If they were just rude, they asked you 10 more questions than they should have, maybe it's their first day on the job, or maybe they just had a really tough day. So maybe extending some grace hopefully makes you feel better. But that's my advice.
They told me I have no right to live here, but rather that it's a privilege. Am I in the wrong here? Should I not travel for 3 months out of the year?
There is an underlying rationale by Congress as well as CBP officers that green card holders and people who are applying for benefits should be here. It makes the United States better for security, for economy, and leaving the United States and being able to re-enter is definitely a privilege, right? Because you're applying for a re-entry document, your travel document, your advanced parole, your green card allowing you to leave and come back is definitely a privilege. It is not a right, right? A right is something that can almost not be regulated. A right is something that is like, U.S. citizen can travel abroad. Like that is a supreme right. But anybody else, lawful permanent resident, visa holders, they generally, it is not a right, right? And they can confiscate the green card. So they definitely have that authority. And there is a political sentiment that wants people to stay here and not leave. So is what they said off-putting? Is it mean? Yes, I totally, completely understand. Are they wrong? Not necessarily.
Normally it's 180 days though, right?
Normally it is 180 days before they thoroughly inspect and stuff like that. But just a blanket statement of, it is a privilege. You should be here. Don't take it for granted. That's kind, in a way it sounds like your parents telling you, like I'm feeding you, all this stuff. So yeah.
I'm traveling tomorrow internationally. I was granted waiver 212. can I come back into the country?
Just like the previous statement, 212 being approved, USCIS. They reviewed it, they approved it. Maybe you went to the consulate, approve it, great. But still, when you come back in, do not take it for granted that the CBP officer would adhere to those two other organizations' approval. We have seen this exact situation happen. USCIS approved it, consulate approved it. Coming in, the CBP officer says, nope, get back out. It was a nightmare situation. But CBP officer, in a way, think of it like checks and balances. If they denied you initially, just because you got approval from a different agency does not mean that they have to adhere to it. But I mean, generally speaking, you should be able to get back in, right? You already got the waiver approved, everybody approved it, you prepare the document. Just don't go with an air of entitlement saying, now you're completely wrong, I got these approved. Still prepare everything. Treat them like it's your first interview that you're asking for this waiver.
Can I travel domestically under HHP with the right ID?
I have no idea what HHP is, and can you travel domestically? I mean, if we're talking about the real ID issue by plane, again, I have little understanding of that other than the fact that airlines are requiring the real ID, and if you don't have it, you can't get on a plane. But if you're doing it by train, if you're asking, are there ICE agents in different places that will catch you, that will deport you, generally speaking, within the domestic space?
Haiti Humanitarian Parole.
Oh, got it. If you have the right to be in the country, ICE officers are not at domestic airports trying to deport people. So if you have HHP and you apply for a real ID and you got it, airline should let you in, and there shouldn't be any ICE agents that are deporting people.
Shouldn't be, but...
But like I said, we've been seeing ICE agents just kind of driving around different places,
During motion to reopen, MTR pending.
Yes.
EAD was valid. Working was illegal, ? Later,
Yes.
MTR approved.
Oh, congratulations. It depends on how your work authorization, your employment card, was issued. I can only say that. But MTR is one of those unique things where when you file a motion to reopen and you win it, it essentially brings back the denial, or it voids the denial, right? So you got denied, you file the motion to reopen, and then your motion to reopen gets approved, and now their case is reopened. It essentially takes this denial and vacates it and pushes it down. You still could get denied again later on, but at least during this period, you didn't get that denial. And so if your work authorization is dependent on your case being open, then your work authorization is still valid.
Options for DACA in Texas?
It doesn't matter where you are, Texas, New York, California, it's still the same. So, number one, did you enter legally? Meaning, did you have a visa? Did you enter through an airport? Did you have admission? If you did, you get married to a U.S. citizen, or other ways, immigrant status, you could adjust. If you didn't enter legally, you have to apply for a waiver or do advanced parole and come back in. But it doesn't matter. The Texas part is irrelevant.
How long does it take after I-765 expedited was approved? Do you receive your work authorization?
We see work authorizations from the time of filing, about 6 months, sometimes as fast as 4 months. Previous years, there were major delays of 15 months, and we sued the government because it's literally taking away your ability to work, right? And it's a civil liberty. But towards the end of last year and this year, we're seeing around 6 months.
My degree is 3 years, while having credible tech experience is 25 years. Am I eligible for EB2?
Okay, you have a couple years of education, and you have 25 years of experience. EB2, just EB2? Okay. You could add up all those time and see if you meet a master's degree, or you're extraordinary in your field. Then you can apply for the EB2. EB2 and IW, it's a self-petition, so it's a little bit different, but you want to do that first, right? So your 3-year education, does it match a bachelor's? And then the rest of your education, can that bump you up to a master's degree, or you prove that you're exceptional? So it's either one of those two.
Someone says, my work authorization was approved in 1 month of filing, and my card has already been printed and mailed.
That is totally possible. Yep. So USCIS has promised for several years that they're trying to pump these out as fast as possible. So filing a case, getting a work authorization within a month is totally possible. Right now it's May. Between May and July, in the whole year, it's always the slowest because all these international students are graduating. They're all applying for EAD cards, for OPT. And so for most people who don't know, USCIS uses a contractor to process a lot of these OPTs and print a lot of these things. So they're extremely backed up.
What is the difference between an I-601 and an I-601A?
601A only waives unlawful presence. 601 waives a bunch of other things. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move into our success story. So if you have questions about the success story, about K-1, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will talk about them at the end if we have time.
Great. Today's success story is about the K-1 Fiance visa. There's so many things about this story that really shows you how broken the immigration system is, but not what you might think. K-1 visa is a fiance visa. You are a US citizen, you fall in love with somebody who's overseas, you petition them to come over as a fiance, and then you get married, and then they get a green card. That's the fiance visa. It's in lots of movies, but I want to walk you through the details of how this US citizen lawyer, mind you, went through this process and all the steps in between. And this is already as smooth as possible. And you will see just exactly how broken the system is, but not broken in the way you might think. It's not Congress's fault. It's just reality. Okay? Let's get to it. Let's go through some of the timelines. This US citizen fell in love while studying abroad in 2019. After dating for about 4 years, decided, you know what, we really want to get married. Okay, so this is the part that's not broken, right? This is just normal life. Studied abroad, met somebody, fell in love, filed the case. So the official K-1 application was filed with USCIS in March 2023. We filed it. The case did not get approved until January 2024. So almost a full year. USCIS reviews this whole application, whether or not this person is credible and deserves to get approved for a K-1. After the approval in January of 2024, they're supposed to go to an interview. And the interview is supposed to happen within about 4 or 5 months. So the interview at latest should be by May of 2024. But there was no appointments available. No matter how often we check, no matter how fast we push, the consulate could not give an appointment. The soonest available appointment was in September of 2024. And we had to get this case revalidated because once USCIS approves it, they give you a small window. You have to get the visa by this time and enter the country, but no appointments were available. So the fastest appointment was in September in 2024. We got it revalidated. The client went to the interview. Smooth sailing, great interview, passed, entered the US. At the customs part, passed. But this part was the part where they were worrying about it the most because prior to filing for the K-1, every single time during their dating process, the customs officer would give this foreign national an extremely hard time. And was a European too, okay? A white European, handsome, great guy coming to the US was receiving a hard time at customs, so was forced to now do this K-1 visa. Anyways, entered the US successfully, and we filed the green card application this April 2025, and the adjudication time with another interview probably takes about a year. So let's go through the timeline again. Fell in love, decided to want to get married in 2023, files this like 500-page application with USCIS. Gets approved. Took a whole year for this immigration agency to approve it. Then a consulate has to interview and approve that. That took from January to September. Took 9 more months. Finally approved. Flies in. Customs interviews them. Approves it. Finally, after all of that, 3 different agencies approving that, taking like more than 2 years, finally they can get married. And then they file for the green card, which will take another year before this person can get a green card. That is the fiance visa, without any hiccups, by the way, right? There's no request for evidence by USCIS. We prepared a good job. No difficult interview, no administrative processing, no confiscation and revocation at the CBP office. Everything smooth sailing, yet it still took this long. Why? Why does our government put U.S. citizens under such a hardship? They just want to get married and file. And that is what we want to talk about, the system. When there are so many, K-1 visa is obviously the fiance visa. What's the alternative to that? What a lot of people do is they just directly come into the country as a tourist or whatnot, stay here legally, fall in love, get married, and directly file for adjustment of status. So many people around the world do that. It generally works in the sense that U.S. citizens are eligible to do that. USCIS might give them a little bit harder time, but instead of waiting, apart for more than 2 years, they're at least together. The unfortunate situation and the good intention behind the K-1 visa, the fiance visa, is that it befalls on so many people who cannot get a visa. They cannot get a tourist visa, because if they can't get a tourist visa, or they have a visa waiver, a lot of times people just come here, get married, and just stay here, right? So a lot of people do that. So who applies for the K-1 visa then? Are the people who can't get any visas. And if they can't get any visas, why? Well, there's probably something in their background. And if there's something in their background and they can't apply for a visa, then everybody who applies for the K-1 visa almost looks like they're bad people. They're bad apples. So now good intending immigrants who have a solid case, when they're applying for a visa, suddenly USCIS, when they're reviewing these applications, suddenly just almost automatically assumes there's something wrong with you. So USCIS takes 8-9 months, approves it. The consulate naturally takes that long. Now, this isn't just about K-1 visa. It's about E2 visa, it's about O1 visa, it's about so many other visas at the consulate stage. It's not just K visas, because consulates only have so much personnel and their funding is getting cut, while the number of people applying for immigration benefits for visas abroad is increasing, right? So this last year, not even last year, just a few months ago, we went to Mexico to visit the consulate, and we got to have a good idea and understanding of how the consulate and embassy works. And this is Mexico, where the embassy's funding is actually increasing, where they're able to get a bigger building, where they're able to get more personnel, unlike many other consulates and embassies across the world, where their funding is actually shrinking and their personnel is shrinking. At the same time, when population almost across the world, different agencies are, and wealth in different agencies and governments are increasing, so more people are applying to come to the United States, whether it's tourist visas, F1 student visas, executive L1 visas, O1 visas, K1 visas. When applications are soaring, number of personnel is shrinking, time gets longer, and so one of the biggest immigration fraud that happened in 2025, guess what it is? It's trying to game the appointment system at embassies. Isn't that crazy? Bots are just booking up all the slots. Very much like, what's that called in the US? When you're trying to buy a ticket and you couldn't get it, and there's bots who just bought the ticket and they're trying to sell it on the second market. Anyways, if you feel frustrated about not being able to attend a Taylor Swift or Beyonce concert because you couldn't get a ticket, or the ticket now, instead of $200, now it's like $2,000. Imagine if you're trying to get married and you, instead of waiting 2-3 months for an interview, you have to wait an extra year before you can even be interviewed to get a visa to come to the US to get married. But that is the unfortunate situation that we are facing today across the world, at every consulate, every embassy. If you want an appointment to get a visa, tourist visa, K-1 visa, E2 visa, you are so low on the totem pole. Who are they prioritizing? They're prioritizing green card applications, which makes sense. They're prioritizing business applications and green card applications, makes sense. And then a lot of the non-immigrants. Now, with that being said, going to the embassy, going to the consulates, seeing how they manage their staff, you know, they have different departments managing different cases, and they move the personnel around. Ultimately, there's still the same number of personnel managing all the non-immigrant applications, and it's just because there's so many applications at play. They're already backed up from COVID. They're still not completely done with that now. And if there's an emergency, for example, everything that happened in Afghanistan, things that are happening in Israel, things that happen in Ukraine and other areas, different embassy personnel as well as Washington, D.C. prioritizes those as well. So with so many things going on, it is nearly impossible to get an interview appointment. And on top of that, in 2025, there's all these bots buying up these appointment slots, and so they're getting canceled. So is our immigration system broken? The intent of the K-1 visa makes perfect sense. You're a U.S. citizen, you want to get married to somebody else, but you are not married yet, because if you are married, you would just file the normal green card application. But you're not sure, so you want to do a fiance application. The intent is good, but the reality of how people get K-1 visas and who can get K-1 visas and who does get K-1 visas, it has created this situation, cesspool of people who are applying but they can't get visas elsewhere. They have a bad background, and there's so much immigrant fraud. And I didn't realize this until very recently. Penalty for marriage fraud, extremely high. Makes sense, obviously. Jail time, fine on the petitioner, on the beneficiary. Not good, shouldn't do it. Yet people do. But what about dating fraud? Because if you are just getting petitioners to say, I might marry you, a fiance fraud, it's not a marriage fraud. And so I didn't realize until I was looking into this whole K-1 situation. There's so many cash for visa frauds out there across the whole world, not just the United States, Poland, Canada, also Australia as well. But because it is not marriage fraud, it's just a fiance fraud, the penalty is much lower. And again, the burden of proof is also significantly lower, right? It's just, I might want to marry you. We did online dating. I saw you in person, so I want to invite you over to the United States. Please get a visa to come here, and let's work it out, and we'll get married within 90 days, and then I'll file the green card for you. If it doesn't work, then you go back, we change our mind, right? Because it is not marriage fraud, penalty is a lot lower, then it allows for the crime syndicates to really take advantage of uninformed individuals, saying, I could hook somebody up with you for a fee. It's terrible, but it is unfortunately what's happening in the world. And that's why a lawyer marrying a European who has a great record and everything is perfect, yet it took from 2023 when we filed the application all the way to 2025 before being able to get married and filing for the green card. And this is already fast. I've seen so many K-1 visas take actually an extra 6 months to a year, which is insane, right? Just to be engaged for that long. I'll talk a little bit about this K-1 visa because looking through it really makes me happy. The documents we provided, other than their personal statement, we provided, I think, 50 pages of photos, and each page has 2 photos with good descriptions of who, when, where, and what. When did this happen? We went across from 2019 all the way till like 2023. You see how the couple evolved and the places they've gone to, their dating, and all of this stuff. We have their phone records of them calling each other, right? And we have statements of all of them sending money back and forth. it was such a strong case because it's so undeniable. Yet it still took 2 years before they're eligible to even get, this petition filed. It's crazy, but that's the world of K-1 visas. Unfortunately, some people cannot just get married and file for a green card. Unfortunately, some people, there are bad actors in this world who are taking advantage of unsuspecting individuals and clogging up the system, and there are bots who are buying up appointment slots. So the reason why the system is broken is also because of so many bad actors are out in the world that makes a good intending visa system more complicated. So sometimes when you're frustrated with the government, when you're frustrated with USCIS, when you're frustrated with the consulate, it's not you. It's not them. It's the unfortunate situation of this world that we live in. But nonetheless, have faith, have hope, work hard. The system should work. Believe in the process. If you have any questions about K-1 visas, feel free to reach out. I mean, we do a lot of these. We try to help out a lot of people in the best way we can. So, thank you for watching. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, now back to the questions.
My brother got arrested outside USA and found not guilty, but his visa is revoked.
Reapply. Reapply, explain yourself. Potentially the consulate would approve. They do not have to listen to the drop charges, right? They could deny people based on hearsay. It's in their opinion of what happened. And so if your brother can be shown in a good light and well deserving of this visa and needs to come to the US and will benefit the US, the consulate might still approve it. I always give this advice to all the applicants who are applying for visas abroad. Think about your application from their perspective. Why should they give you this visa? How would you benefit the United States? Their core mission as a consulate, as an embassy, is to help people come to the United States to make the United States better. That's their entire mission. So whatever visa you're applying for, think about it in that light.
Even if your marriage is legitimate and you get married within 1 year, is that a red flag?
You get married within 1 year of presumably having a prior marriage end, right? So you get divorced, and then within 1 year you get married again, and you're applying for a benefit. Is that a red flag? Yes. Is it a devastating red flag? Is it a irrefutable red flag? No, right? You might have been dating before the marriage ended. You might, the person might have helped you out of, it might be a rebound, but doesn't mean all rebounds are bad, right? This person might be the savior, right? So you really want to be able to explain yourself.
What if it's like for 1 year from meeting each other? For no divorce in the past, just met, and then 1 year later they're married.
Oh, you must be young. Plenty of older people meet and get married within like months. Young people, on the other hand, take longer. So you sound younger.
So
And
not a red flag?
it's not a terrible red flag, no.
Can you talk more about the I-130 green card and the priorities compared to other visas?
Maybe you're asking because what I said earlier about the embassies. So the embassies, they told us this at the conference. There's such a backlog on all visa categories and everybody trying to get benefits, green cards or visas to come to the US, that they have to prioritize. And so they move a lot of their personnel to process people who have already been married, they already have green cards, they're coming over, they're almost here, right? So all of that, they're providing most personnel at the consulates to interview them so they could work through the pipeline faster. As opposed to, let's say you're an E2 visa, right? You're an investor. You invested like 100, 200,000 in the United States. You want to start this business and you're going to hire a lot of employees. You already have employees. The business is suffering because you're not there yet. You might have to wait a lot longer because the consulates just have less personnel and less interview spots. And there are still a lot of people who are applying to do the E2s, right? And so that's what I mean by the priorities. The consulates are prioritizing the interview slots. And that's why you see bots going and buying up all these slots. So it makes the problem even worse.
What happens when asylum is denied? Can you appeal?
Yes, under the APA. However, we don't do asylum cases. So I am not in a position to advise anything on asylum. But under general immigration law, almost all things can be appealed to the federal courts unless it is explicitly reserved so that there's no chance that federal courts will review it. But even then, there's small wiggle rooms, right? So there's, for example, the Adam Walsh Act prevents certain cases from being reviewed by the federal courts. Certain consulates decisions cannot be reviewed by federal courts, but there might be still wiggle room to challenge that. So asylum being, if you get denied, you can still try to take that and challenge it in federal court.
How much time will I have to wait until my priority date becomes current? Special immigrant juvenile.
We also don't do SIGIS cases, but if you're asking about your priority date, you check the visa bulletin, right? And that is constantly being updated, right? So don't try to predict how the priority date moves, but you could see it at least every single month.
They say my priority date was in 2024.
Okay.
So it is current?
So you want to check the visa visa bulletin to see if it's current or not and when you can file. So that thing is constantly changing.
Can you explain deferred action and the benefits of that?
The deferred action, that's a legal term, but it applies to so many different people in so many different contexts. Generally speaking, doesn't matter if it's USCIS, ICE, or CBP, it essentially just postpones their decision, whether it's negative or positive. Most of the time it's negative. So they postpone that and allow you to stay in status quo. So for example, let's say you are being deported. If you have a deferred action on your case, maybe they won't immediately deport you, you're still eligible to continue to stay, to maintain status quo. There's some equity, there's some reason as to why you should be able to stay. Removing you would cause too much pain and harm for individuals, so they're not immediately taking this action against you. So it's just allowing the status quo to continue. Allowing the status quo to continue is better than changing things, at least right now. That's essentially what that means.
From your current experience, how long does it take for marriage-based green cards to be approved?
If you're married to a U.S. citizen, they petition you, the entire process, I would estimate 1.5 to 2 years. So you're filing the 485, you're filing I-130, and then you're waiting for the biometrics, the combo card, and then interview, and then approval. I would give yourself 1.5 to 2 years. In the past, historically, it could be as fast as 6 months, 9 months. In this administration, just give yourself a little bit of a buffer.
I'm planning to travel next year with a green card, marriage-based. Do I need to take other paperwork, or what paperwork should I take?
Your green card, advanced parole, reentry permit if you're going to leave for a long time. Those are the main things. CBP officers they're police officers. They don't like looking at stuff, but they want you to have it. And they're much more concerned about where you live, where you work, why did you leave, and how you explain things. Now, what would be good for you to carry, like let's say they could see you got your green card through your marriage. If they want to see your phone and you absolutely have no text messages and no photos with your significant other, that calls in some major red flags, right? And so know where you live, the tax filings, the work, the chat messages, the pictures, why you had to leave temporarily, you're coming back, you're still together. Those are things that they care most about.
This administration said they are looking into VAWA because there's a lot of fraud. How would it be considered fraud?
Like how almost anything is considered fraud. You fake the documentation, right? So VAWA, for most people who don't know, is when you are trying to get a green card through being abused by a U.S. citizen, right? So a marriage fraud is saying, we are in love, this marriage is real, when in reality you guys live in 2 different places and you guys never met. That's marriage fraud. VAWA fraud is, this person abused me, they're so evil, I deserve a green card, when in fact you never got abused by said person. So you're committing perjury, you're faking documents, you're faking a story, and when they check it's not real, then you get penalized.